where tags come into play. That's the two roles of comms to speed up that coordination, to make it faster so that the reaction time in fights is much lower. And the second one is tags or commanders to make it so that these kind of skills that are used, that you know, work in synergy with each other, happen in a short interval of time to get the maximum effect from them. That is basically it. That is the most basic part of WVW. Now, when we go into further, there's a couple of things that you need to sort of get your head around first. Unlike PvE, this is not about necessarily always avoiding damage and then coming back to do damage yourself. Yes, you want to avoid damage. This is the best way to sustain. However, it is about avoiding damage together with everybody else. And if you're going into damage, you're going into damage together with everybody else. Often in WVW fights, you're going to be going into damage rather than going away from damage. So that initial instinct of always avoiding damage at any cost needs to go. So this is when I usually say, first in WVW, you need to learn to die before you learn to survive. That means if the group's going into damage, into the dangerous area, whatever, you go in without thinking about it. If the group dies together in the spot. There's going to be mistakes made. Both individual and tags will make mistakes. That's part of the game. If there is no mistakes, nobody ever loses. So risks are taken and whatnot. The most important thing is commitment. When the tag commits to a push, to a fight, to whatever, everybody in the sub squad needs to be fully committed to that action. Because even if the tag makes a mistake, if everybody is together and committed, there is a chance that that mistake can be corrected, or that fight can still be won. If there is lack of commitment, if players decide that they know better, they pull off to the side, they think they can help out by, you know, not dying or whatnot because they think somebody's making a mistake, that is usually gonna bring a worse result. Sometimes it might bring a better result, but most of the time it will bring a worse result. And that brings me to the last point in connection with everything that I've said so far. This is WVW fights are fights of probability. This is not fights of certainty. There is no certainty in this game mode because of the way the mechanics work. They're all or nothing mechanics. Like everything in Guild Wars, it's all or nothing. If you're 1 pixel too far from your group, you're not receiving any boons, you're not receiving any sustain, cleanses, whatnot. 1 pixel in, and you get everything. So it's a little bit of a situation where it's about probabilities. What's your chance of surviving a fight? It's never going to be 100% because of that situation. It works on the other side too. When there is an AoE on the ground, for example, I'll use the hollow ground as an example. So this skill right here starts to pulse from the middle out and finds the 5 closest targets. If there is no sub squads, if the way we are, everybody is in sub 1, it's gonna affect the 5 closest to the center. And that's on every pulse. It could be different people. So there is an element of chance in these things. If all of the enemy bombs or you end up being the closest to them by freak chance, there's a really small chance of that happening, but it's possible. Then no amount of sustain will keep you alive, and nobody around you might go down, and you might go down instantly. So that's why it is about doing these things repeatedly over and over together will guarantee you success a large amount of the time, most of the time, over 80% of the time. It's not going to guarantee you 100% of the time. There is no such thing as 100% guarantees in WVW, so don't look for it. All right. Now I'm gonna go over a couple of settings and stuff before we get into the more precise things. Two things. One, they changed recently, but the other is still a thing. So your dodge. The way the game is set up is it teaches you to double tap to dodge. Get rid of that. Forget about double tapping. That is the dumbest thing that ever was done by whoever coded this game. It was probably a hamster. The double tap dodge is glitchy. It's slow. It takes you two times you have to press the key, and when you're double tapping, you take your finger off of the direction you're moving in, so you stop. It is a death sentence in WVW. Just changing that will lower the amounts of times you die by over 50%. Just that little change. Get into your key bindings, set up a key, get used to it, and use a key to dodge. No double touch, no double tap dodge. On top of everything, you might double tap forward and it might dodge backwards. It's glitchy. But the second one is the A and D keys, which are left and right. Now, they recently made a change. They've probably been watching past movement and positioning trainings. It's the same dumbest thing that it was before, where A and D were turn left and turn right. There is absolutely no need for turn left and turn right in this game. That's stupid. You use the mouse to turn left and right. So you need to set up A and D as strive left and strive right. Now, they did that by default, what was it, a couple weeks back. So for new players, it will be set up there, but there's still older players that are probably used to having turn left and turn right. Get rid of it. Set up strive left and strive right. There's two reasons. First, much faster movement laterally. Second, you can be moving to the left or to the right and still facing forward. That's what strive does. So if the enemy is in front of us there, and I'm striving to the left here and then striving to the right, I have my side turned to them and I'm moving sideways, but the game counts it as if I'm facing the enemy. So anything they direct at me, it's counting as a hit from the front. That is important because there's a whole range of skills and traits and sigils and runes and whatnot that proc on hits from the flank and hits from behind. So as long as you're facing the enemy, that lowers the chance that will happen. Doesn't mean it's going to stop it, because AoEs, for example, as I said, if I'm facing the marker, the AoE is placed in front of me, okay, it's hitting me from the front. However, if the AoE is placed to the side here, it's actually hitting me from the side, because that's where the center of the AoE is, right there. So there is no sure way to avoid flank hits and hits from behind, but there is ways to minimize them. And again, we're talking about probabilities and not certainties. All right. Couple more movement things. Now, when we move forward, we're moving at a certain speed. That's your W key. That can be enhanced, improved through boons. Whether that be swiftness, super speed, or it can be deteriorated by slow and whatnot. There is another move, like strafing left and right is slower, but it's still generally a good enough speed. There is, however, the S key, which is moving backwards. That is very, very slow. That is a key that you should not use almost ever in WVW, except in certain very limited situations, and we'll go over them a little bit later. So when we're doing a movement forward and we're doing a retreat, or we're doing a disengage or whatnot, we're never S-keying. You're not S-keying. What you're doing is you're turning around, show your back to the enemy, and you move back until you reposition. That doesn't it doesn't matter that you've shown your back to the enemy. That is the fastest way. Especially if you have super speed, there is no way for them to actually move faster than you. So they cannot catch up to you when you're moving forward like that. If you're S keying, you're gonna be dead meat in no time. You make it very easy for them to hit you because you're moving very slow. They're closing in on you, and they can be timing their bomb, and your reaction time is slow. So forget about the S key, except in certain choke situations, and we'll go over that a little bit later. To help with the turnaround, there is a key called About Face that you can set up. That helps. So you're moving forward, you press a key, it turns you automatically, and then you just go 180 degrees back. It's very useful. You can set up a key for it. The other alternative is using Action Cam. You can do that as well. Basically, it puts the cursor in the middle of your screen. It's always in the middle of the screen, and wherever the mouse is pointing, that is the direction in which you're moving. So you can just turn around and it turns you. In addition to that, in Action Cam, when you hit the S key, it just turns you around and it moves forward again. So you're always moving forward. You're never actually moving backwards with the S key. So if you can get used to Action Cam, it's very useful. Another reason for it that is very useful is that it's very easy and quick. You can put down your wells in AoEs. Like you just point the mouse at the spot you want to drop it, and you drop it. The other thing is you can be looking in one direction and be moving in all kinds of other directions without having to use a key or anything. Because basically the cam is looking at your cursor and you can be moving in all directions. That is helpful when you're for example moving forward and you need to do a bomb on the side and whatnot, to finish downs, things like that. Now there is one drawback from Action Cam. You cannot drop skills right at your feet. It's gonna drop them about 300 distance in front. It's a bit of a pain. So if you want to drop at your feet, you got to drop it and then move into it and things like that. It gets a little bit of getting used to. So that is the drawback about Action Cam. That will move us into the movement part in sort of engagements and in fights. So in fights, you're going to have a few stages, generally. One is what you'd call the preset stage, pre-boon stage, or whatnot. That's when you get together and you apply boons and whatever other effects to enhance your damage output and to enhance your sustain output. Usually that happens before we're going to do an engagement with the enemy, whether that be range or melee or whatnot. It's going to happen within the previous 5 to maximum 10 seconds, because after 10 seconds, most of the pre-booning is gone. After that, there is a few different scenarios that can go. I'm going to go over them one at a time. We'll go with a range spike first. Essentially, what you're doing is you're approaching the enemy. You're getting within 900 to 1200 distance. That's about 900 there. 1200 would be about that much. Maybe a little bit less, actually. No, that's about right there. So you're looking to deliver damage at that distance. This is not damage that it's going to decide the fight. This is damage that will catch some of their people. Those that are slower to get away, not as disciplined, whatnot. You're looking to take a piece out of the enemy squad, or you're looking to get them to expand skills. Ultimately, WVW fights are an exchange of skills. You're exchanging your sustain skills versus their DPS skills, and their DPS skills versus your sustain skills. The management of those skills is what decides matches, not the number of players. Number of players help because the more players you have, the more such skills you have available to you, and the more come back off cooldown during a fight. So you have an advantage in quantity because of the sheer number of players. However, efficiency can compensate for that. So usually this is done with a pull, and whoever doesn't have stab gets pulled, CC'd, gets killed. You get a couple of kills, that's an advantage. Think of it this way. If it's two groups of 20 fighting each other, if on a ranged spike you pull two people and you kill them, you already have a 10% advantage in the next mini engagement of the fight. You've already taken out 10% of their squad players. So while it seems that it's only two people that you killed, that is a big advantage. Now, if it's 40, that's 5%. It's manageable. It's not as big, but it's still something. So there's usually between evenly matched groups, there's going to be at least a few such exchanges before a fight. Additionally, there's things that the tag gets information from that, both about his own squad and about the enemy squad. So if we approach here, let's say stack it right here, and we're gonna approach forward in 3, 2, 1, and give me a shade spike on the marker in 3, 2, 1. Now, all right. So this is what I'm seeing right now. I'm seeing a nice tight grouping of skills. I'm seeing them come together at a roughly the same time. There isn't a big difference in time between the circles appearing. So what it tells me is that I have a group that is reacting roughly at the same time, that is moving roughly together and stacked well. That means I have a lot damage that I can use there. Now it gives me information and allows me as a tag to actually do take more risks or attempt to take advantage of situations that otherwise would not be as advantageous. At the same time, they give me the same information when they do their shade spike. If their skills are all over the place here, that tells me that their damage is spread out. They're not staying tight on their tag, and that means that we can push them. I have a more organized squad. I have a squad moving better, using skills more coordinated. That means we can out-sustain them. The efficiency of our skills is going to be higher, and I can take the more risky approach and go through their damage, get to them, because I know that when I get on top of them, at that point, because their skills are spread out, I'm going to have the advantage. So these things are important. This is the information you give out to the enemies as well. And just for that reason, it is important to stay tightly on the tag. The next one I'll talk about is engaging melee. But before that, I want to say two things about positioning in the squad when moving and when stacked. Generally, you want the more tanky players, that's the support players, that tend to be a little bit further in front of with the tag. They're closer to the tag most of the time. That and DPS is a little bit further back. Optimum positioning would be this. If the tag's right here, it is about a little bit over a mount length. That's as long as the squad has to be, no more than that. Like the furthest back the tail is at the marker right now. If you're further than that, you're too far. If you find yourself further than that, you need to quickly close in the distance. Having said that, there are situations in which you need to push up and get in closer to the tag. I'll go over those in a second, but I want to say something else before that. If you're new, if you're getting used to, if you're having trouble following the tag, moving with the tag and whatnot, any kinds of if your lag is higher, whatnot, always err on the side of being closer to the tag rather than being further away from the tag. Start from on top of the tag, even if that's not the optimum positioning for the role you play, and then start moving back until you get into optimum distance. Don't start the other way around. The other way around, you're gonna build bad habits, you're gonna be caught out often, you're gonna be dying a lot, it's gonna be frustrating and whatnot. When you're right on top of the tag, sometimes you'll die, even though you're right on top of the tag, especially if you're DPS. And that can be frustrating, but that's gonna happen a lot less often. So always err on the side of being closer to the tag than further away from the tag. Okay, now about melee. Usually after range spikes are exchanged, information has been gathered about the other group, about your own group, whatnot. Maybe you got a couple of kills. You're gonna be going in for the push. The tag's gonna give you a sign. It's gonna say, okay, we're gonna push in 3, 2, 1, whatever. The tag's gonna give you some kind of indication. Sometimes there isn't time. The opening is right there. You need to react and you need to go. But most of the time, you're gonna get some kind of indication. At that point, that is when you tuck it in, right? You're in the back line here. There's gonna be a push forward. Now you need to tuck it in. You need to bring it in closer. You got to get into within that distance. The reason for that is once the push starts moving forward, those that remain too far behind might end up out of the range of their scrapper's super speed, or might get hit by some kind of condi damage that slows them down, that does not get cleansed, and they're gonna get separated. So the closer we are together when we're doing the push, because we have to go through damage to get to the enemy and condis and whatnot, the better. So when the push is gonna happen, even if you're DPS, even if your optimum positioning is further back, you tuck it in. You tuck it into the tag, you're getting closer, and you do the push. It also helps with sustain. For example, we decide to move forward, second group appears, or their bomb is harder than expected, we're taking damage, well then we can reposition back, but we're helping to mitigate the damage. Even if you're a DPS player, your role in mitigating damage is still there. You want to avoid damage, but when the squad is going to be taking damage, you need to be taking damage with the rest of the squad. You have to trust your supports to cleanse and to heal you when that's needed, but you need to be the extra target cap in there, because the enemy skills, they're hitting 5 people, and if all the DPS are out of range of it, then all the damage is going down on the supports, and that makes it harder. So for example, there's let's say right here on the marker, there is 3 wells and we're 20 people. We go in 20 people. Well, those 3 wells can only hit 15 of us at a time. And as we're moving, we are changing our positioning to the middle of those wells. So it's different 15 people of those 20 that are getting hit. That is how you mitigate damage through numbers. And that happens, it doesn't matter. You can be outnumbered 60 to 20. As long as you have the 20 really tightly together, you can have a localized situation where you outnumber the enemy. And that's how you compensate for numbers of players, because your skills are more efficient and because you're target capping their skills. If their skills are all spread out, there's only a few wells at a time hitting us, then being together actually helps us mitigate, and we can be taking very little damage. In that regard, it's very important to note as well that damage mitigation in WVW happens through boons, mostly through boons. Healing is not to mitigate damage. Healing is to recover HP after damage has been mitigated. It is to recover some HP, and it's mostly to recover the DPS up to over 90%, so they can get their damage bonuses and they can output more damage, because usually there's traits or sigils or whatnot that tap into extra damage if the player is over 90%. That's where the healing comes in. On the other side, when you see the enemy going low on their HP, they're not recovering it back, that's usually an indication that they've spent their sustain skills, and you can apply additional damage pressure and generate downs. Okay. Any questions so far? Anything unclear? Anything that you'd like to... Okay. I'll get into more specific things then. Now, I'll talk about stealth first. So there was a change. It's been a while now where combo fields are prioritized based on the caster. So any combo field that you generate, when you blast, you're gonna hit your own combo field first. Each combo field has a maximum of 5 unique players that can combo with it. And there isn't really a limit, a hard limit on how many times you can combo it, but there is a practical limit, and really you can't combo a field unlimited amounts of time because you don't have unlimited amounts of finishers. Not all finishers are created equal. Blast finishers tend to be the best ones because they give out the sort of things that we want. So for stealth, there's 2 things to keep in mind. If you have a scrapper, support scrapper in your sub squad, and he applies stealth, generally just the pulses from the stealth will give you max duration stealth on everybody in the sub squad, as long as you're within the circle. The circle is pretty big, so it's about this wide, so that should not be a problem. It also moves with the scrapper, so if you're within range of the stack, you should be getting the stealth. Now, to extend that, because it's pulses, while the pulses are happening, some of the time expires. 1 or 2 blasts can extend that enough so that you have max stealth when you're moving. If you don't have a scrapper in your sub squad, and this is for the other sub squads too, if there's sub squads that do not have a scrapper, a single scrapper can stealth up to 5 sub squads if it's done correctly. Such coordination is very hard to achieve, but a scrapper with its field can help to stealth a second group. So if you have 30 in your squad and you only have 3 scrappers, it's possible to get everybody stealthed still. What needs to happen at that point is, in the subgroups where the scrapper is dropping, where the support scrappers are, and they're dropping the stealth, only the firebrands should be blasting with their staff too. In addition to the scrappers should be blasting their old fields, but only the firebrands. That way, it's only 2 people from that subgroup that are blasting those fields, and 3 more unique people can actually blast those fields and give stealth to the people in their sub squad. That's where everybody in the subgroups that do not have a scrapper and have easily available blast, that's not always all the DPS players, should be blasting those fields. That way, everybody will get stealth. Now, the groups without a scrapper will not get as long of a stealth because they're not going to be able to max it out, but it will give enough. So, stealth is used for 2 reasons. One is for gaining an advantage on engagement. This is where you try to surprise the enemy and jump them without them knowing you're coming, without them seeing you, without them being ready for it. That is one. The second one is for line of sight and for closing the distance. Now, there's a very important distinction between the 2. One means that you can expect to arrive and hit the enemy without them doing anything to counteract you. The second one is not the case. So if stealth's being, let's say, if we're over here, the enemy is outside of the gate there. They're unaware we're here. We can stealth and engage them out of stealth. They're not going to know where we are approaching from. They're not going to know anything. We're just going to appear to them. It's going to be a surprise. That's one situation. Second situation is the enemy is in front of us and we're stealthing in their face, or we're moving back and we're stealthing. Now they're aware that we are somewhere in front of them. They're not quite aware which is the trajectory we're going to take towards them. They're expecting us to push them, but they don't know if we're going to come from the left, if we're going to come from the right, if we're going to come straight forward. In addition to that, we've broken line of sight. So any targets they had, individual targets, let's say they're DPS players, as soon as we were within range, they were going tap, tap, tap to find out soft targets or targets of opportunity that they can single skill target, or pick out the tag or whatnot. All of that is broken. So when you stealth, that's removed and they don't have that. This is a main reason why stealth is used in the middle of combat, is breaking line of sight and breaking targeting. Second thing is it allows us to close the distance. If we are pushing straight up and they're here, they have their cooldowns, we're going to have to push through a lot of damage. If we stealth, we might be doing the exact same thing, but we have the advantage of them not knowing exactly where we are and exact time. So we can stealth and hold here for 2 seconds, for example, and they're going to be thinking we're pushing straight up. They're going to use up their skills. Now we have an advantage. They've spent skills that are not going to have full effect. We can still push through some of the damage, but that's an advantage. And we haven't used up any sustain. So these are the reasons for using stealth. What is important to keep in mind when using stealth is after you deliver the bomb. So we've stealthed it. They weren't aware. We came up. We delivered our bomb. As soon as we deliver our bomb, we're revealed. The jig is up. They know where we are. If we didn't kill them with the first hit, now we are on cooldowns. We spent our skills. Our DPS has been expanded. We still have our sustain, but our DPS has been expanded. Theirs has not been. They have not hit anything. They got hit. So they have their counter. They will turn around and counter at the spot that we came out. Where we appeared, that's where they're going to bomb back. It's natural. It's the first reaction that happens. Even if it's not coordinated, that's where they'll start bombing. They'll either start bombing at their feet or they'll start bombing where the damage came from. This is important because once you deliver your hit from stealth, they still have their cooldowns, and now you don't have yours in terms of DPS. So you need to reposition to avoid the counter hit. 2 reasons for it. First, you generated downs. Let's say you generated 10 downs. There was 40 of them. It's 20 of us. We generated 10 downs. The fight's nowhere over, but we've taken away half of their advantage. If we sit here and the other 30 bomb, they still outnumber us 30 to 20. So we got to mitigate more damage than we have sustained for. And now they generate 5 downs among us because we didn't reposition right away. The end result is 5 of their downs are going to rally. And they're going to have 5 down. We're going to have 5 down. And that's a net loss for us in terms of the exchange. Yeah, they've lost the same amount as us. But because they have more players, for them, that's a winning exchange. That's why it's important. Once you deliver your hit out of stealth, unless you've completely broken the enemy with the initial bomb, you need to reposition right away. You need to reposition right away with the tag. So right here, an example. Let's stack it real quick. Doing advanced powers, and we're doing stealth, and we're moving forward, and we're delivering a bomb in 3, 2, 1. Deliver it now. Bomb, 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 bomb. and reposition to the left right away. So that's what we're doing. The reason is we came out of stealth here. They're countering there. We generated the downs. We're still within range that we can capitalize on those downs, but we're out of their counter bomb. Now our advantage is double. It's not only that we generated downs, but also we're going to get our cooldowns back first because we were the first to hit. This is what I call the advantage of initiative. The advantage of aggression. If you're the first one delivering the hit, it's more risky. However, you get the cooldowns back first. And that is an advantage that is gonna be perpetuated throughout the fight until there is a full reset in the fight. So avoiding their hit gives us triple advantage. First, we hit them with our DPS and we did the maximum possible with it. Second, they had to expand their sustain. And third, by repositioning right away, avoiding their counter, they didn't deliver damage with their DPS, and we did not need to expand our sustain. At this point, we're on even grounds. However, we generated downs. They're on cooldowns, both sustain and DPS. We're on cooldowns DPS, but we have sustain. Now we can push in further and keep the pressure up because we have our sustain cooldowns, with which we can mitigate a lot better the sort of continuous damage that we have until we get our bomb back. So we can keep the pressure up, finish off downs, and keep them under constant damage pressure, not allowing them to fully recover sustain skills. They're forced into using their sustain kills as soon as they come off. And as soon as our bomb comes back, we can finish them off because our bomb's gonna come back before theirs. That's why that little reposition right away after the hit from stealth gives you a huge return. Huge return. So it's very important coming out of stealth when you're doing a hit to do the reposition and not get hit by the counter. It changes dramatically how the battle feels and how it looks. If you get caught by the counter, it's a completely different story. At the least, you've used up your sustain skills, and now you don't have the opportunity to keep the push going, to keep the pressure going on them, because you're at best on even grounds. At worst, they got downs and they got rallies for themselves and negated your whole advantage from the stealth hit. All right. Any questions about that? Okay. I'm going to go over skill usage in terms of engagements a little bit. So this is also for stealth bombs. Stealth bombs generally give you the opportunity to deliver the best coordinated bomb you can, because you're coming out of stealth, you're grouped up, it's usually pre-prepared, everybody should be tightly together, and you can drop your skill at your leisure. Like, you have time and space to do it. So what you want to be doing is sort of layering your skills in the following way. You want strips, CC, followed by damage, in that order. Like, that doesn't mean that you're dropping your strip skill and you're waiting for it to happen, and then 3 seconds later CC, and then another 3 seconds later. No, you're dropping them one after the other, but you're looking for that layer. So that first, it's happening within 1 to 2 seconds. Like, this is not a conscious thing. This is how you're tailoring your rotation in that situation. What's happening is you're taking away their boons, which is their heavy sustain. If you're stripping their protection, you're stripping stab, aegis. That means the DPS, when it hits, it's going to do a lot more damage. The second part to it, the CC, is locking them down in place, or it's slowing them down. It's interrupting them, making it harder for them to move out of that bomb, or to move together out of the bomb. So you're separating people. That is the role of the CC. And then comes the DPS. If there is no protection, if there is no damage reducing boons, there is no Aegis which blocks hits, then you're going to be doing a lot more damage. That's how you maximize your damage. So, for example, if the enemy has their full sustain on, they have protection, they have facet of nature from the revenants, they have a frost aura, all of that brings out damage reduction up to 70, up to 80%. That means you need to do 4 to 5 times the amount of damage to kill them as you would if they didn't have any of those. So stripping protection, just stripping protection means you're increasing your DPS damage by 1/3. If they're hitting with 10k hits, they're going to be hitting with 15k. And that could be the difference between one hit downing players and needing 2 pulses. And if one pulse is bringing down one player, then the next pulse is hitting somebody else, or it's finishing that down. It's a cascading thing. It rolls over and it's big. So again, you want strips, CC, DPS. Okay. Now, let me go over a couple of terrain things. Come to the stairs here, please. This is important.
Please. Not the stairs, anything but the stairs.
So, WVW and Guild Wars 2 is really poor with verticality. Verticality is really bad. So when we are right here, I'll stay there. Everybody stay there. I need one person right in front of me right there on the marker. Just one person. All right. Select them. I'm going to use my mantra and you're going to see that he's not getting anything. I'm popping my mantras and he's not getting anything. Okay. I move up just a little bit. Now he's getting. You see the difference? And he's within range, both distances, he's within range. He's well within range. But he's not getting because my skills are actually underneath him. So when we're on stairs, when we're on hills, things like that, you need to be aware of that mechanic, of that situation. It's also about skills. Some skills will go on the surface like hollow ground. It will go on the stairs. Some skills will not. Some of them will just jut out horizontally out of the stairs and nothing below them or above them gets hit. So keep these things in mind. When we're on stairs, we need to bunch up more. We need to be tighter, even tighter together. We need to be right on top of each other. Because you can be within 90 distance of the tag, like right there, and not get anything because of the verticality situation. That's why on stairs, on inclines and whatnot, you gotta get in closer together. Same thing about lines of sight. So, for example, if we're here and the enemy is down there, from this spot, I can freely cast on them. I can cast on that spot, no problem. They can't. If they're there, they cannot hit us here. Best they can do is hit somewhere here. Right? So these are important to be aware of and know in terms of positioning. This is mostly the role of the tag. The tag needs to position you in the right place, but you got to be aware as a player of these situations too, so that you're not trying to use skills where you can't. And that segues into the next point of engagements. Damage is not always used to kill players. damage is sometimes used to manipulate the battlefield, to control the battlefield, to control the movement of the enemy, to control terrain. For example, the enemy is pushing up. The tag might call for a shade spike top of the stairs. They're not at the top of the stairs. They might never get up to the top of the stairs, but we are applying damage there to stop them from pushing up. This is to control their movement, their battlefield. There's a multitude of reasons that might be the case. For example, they prepared for the push. They used up their sustain. They used up their big stat, whatnot. If you stop their push here, then you've set them back 20 seconds. They're not going to have their big stab. They're not going to have their big sustain skills for a number of time. They don't have another push. By that time, you'll have more damage back. So it is not always about hitting the enemy with every single DPS skill. Sometimes DPS skills are used to control the battlefield. Second thing, for example, we are in a wider choke situation. So we are over here. Let's say we've placed our traps over here, and we're back over here. So we want them to push across on the right side. We don't want them to push across on the left side in front of us. So we can be placing just in front of us on the left, placing damage, shade spike, placing lines, forcing them to push us on the right if they're committed to that push and running into the traps. Again, damage is being used to control the battlefield and control the enemy's movement, not necessarily to kill them. Like usually you're not going to be doing that with wells, but you can be doing that with a shade spike or with haste damage or whatnot. You're using damage for that. Another one, I like to use this often, is I will do approach for a range spike, and I'll ask for the range spike before we are in range. The reason is I want us to put out circles out there. I want them to see them, and I want them to think that we've expanded skills so that they think there is an opportunity to push us then. I'm baiting them into pushing us for a melee hit. At that point, usually I will take a show back and regain some time and distance. The reason for a show back is usually to gain space and time. Space in terms of more ground that they have to traverse to get to us to deliver their skills, and time to recover our cooldowns. Management in terms of fight is that it's managing space and time in terms of getting cooldowns back. In chokes, this is the only time when S key might be useful. This is when we're trying to keep a choke, stop them from pushing through. So they're gonna try and push this. For example, we peeked here, they're coming around the side, we dodge one back, we're delivering damage right here, we're stopping their push. At this point, we can be S-keying to get away from the front of their bomb and still keeping close enough to deliver a large amount of damage so that we can stop their push. This is the only time. Now, having said that, never S-key in front of the tag. You have to be always behind the tag. Even if you're right on top of it, you got to be behind it. Tag needs to be on a straight line between you and the enemy always. There's only very few exceptions to that. Spellbreakers, Weavers, Chronos. Because of the roles they play, sometimes they will be off tag, they will be to the side of the tag or whatnot. They are the only ones that does not apply to. Everybody else, as soon as you end up in front of the tag, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. You got pulled, you know, you got slowed, whatever. It doesn't matter. Your first job is to reposition back into the correct position. Do not worry about DPS skills at that time. You're looking to reposition at that point. That's your first and most important priority. So you ended up in front of the tag, you turn around, you show your back to the enemy, and you move until you get on the other side of the tag. Same thing. on engagements, Nova likes to ask for disengage. I ask for show back. It's essentially the same thing. So we approach and I'm saying show back, we're turning. Now, people are moving behind me. That's normal because I am at the front of the squad and I'm saying we're going to turn in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm turning. That does not mean you turn right away. You're behind me. You keep moving until you get on the right side of the tag again. Right? As soon as you get behind me, that's when you turn. You don't turn in front of me. Okay. Any questions? Nothing. Okay. All right. I'm gonna go over a couple more things, just a couple, and we'll call it after that. It's been I hope it hasn't been too long. All right. I'll talk a little bit about skill synergies and skill utilization in different situations because they're important. Using the correct skills at the correct moment is what leads to efficiency of skill usage, both for DPS and for sustain. I'll go over DPS first, and then I'll go over sustain. So, generally, you want to drop damage leading the enemy. You don't want to be dropping it right on top of them, except in some situations. If we're in a choke fight, you want to drop it on top of them. If we're in open field, you usually want to lead them. That does not always necessarily mean that you're leading the damage in front of them. Because, for example, if just the way I like to do sometimes and bait a hit, you know, move forward and then show back. If they often do that, sometimes you want to actually drop the damage behind them. So when they turn to retreat, they actually run into the damage. It's important to know that because as the tag's gonna say, for example, I need damage in front. Give me a hit in front. We're within range. This is about 600 distance, and we're gonna be dropping shades, for example. Well, your shades have a range that is up to that, which is 900 distance, and up to here, which is 300 distance. So you have the ability to drop your damage in a wider area here. You're looking to drop it where they're going to be moving off to. So you're looking to lead them with the damage. Some groups it's easier, some groups it's harder. Most groups, as you get more experienced, as you run in WVW more often, you're going to make those reads a lot easier, and it's going to become second nature. You're going to be seeing where they're moving, and you're going to be anticipate where they're moving. So you want to drop your skill. Can I get one person sitting on top of the marker, please? Thank you. Now, imagine he's moving to the left here. So he's there, and he's going to be moving to the left. We want to drop like this. Okay, that's where we want to drop the damage. He's going to run into it, and he has to go through the whole bomb. If we drop it right on top of him, he only needs to go through half of it. Right? So this is an important part for the DPS. While you want to get the bomb concentrated, you want to lead the enemy into damage. Sometimes it will cause a whiff, or they'll turn on a dime and avoid the damage altogether. There is that. That's where repositioning comes in. That's where sustain comes in. Buying us space and time to get the bomb back so we can do it again. The second part is finishing downs. Okay? So we generated a lot of downs. We're going to be pushing forward, but we're not going, like the downs are right there. We're going to be pushing left side because they're retreating this way, and we want to keep the pressure up. Now the downs are over here. Don't go to them. Don't go to finish them. Even if they rally, they're easier to bring back down. They're separated from the squad, whatnot. Even if they rally. As we're moving forward though, as a DPS, you can peek to the side, drop a skill, nothing big, usually a shade or something like that, that is not a big skill. It's gonna do some damage and we'll finish off the downs as we go. Or we'll keep them down for long enough that we can come back and kill them. This is an important part. When we're going on top of downs as well, when you hear the tag say cleave, use your auto skills, 1, 2 on your weapons. It's good enough to kill off downs. DPS players, you do a shit ton of damage with your auto skills, especially if your builds are correct. You've got maximum crit, which means 100% crit. You're going to be critting them in down state. You're going to be killing them with your 1, 1, 2, 2 in no time. You don't need to be using big skills. You're saving those for the next bomb. Okay. In terms of sustain, 2 things. 1, this is dodging. Now, I tend to call out dodging sometimes. Most commanders don't. Most players need to learn when to dodge and how, because it's a skill that needs to be developed. You don't need to be told when to dodge. Now, while you're learning, it helps. It gives you a reference point, but everybody needs to learn to dodge at the correct moments. As you get better at reading fights, you'll get better at dodging. But overall, that is a very important skill to develop. The reason is the dodge is the most powerful sustained skill that exists in the game. It avoids all damage. Power damage, con damage, all damage. There's nothing that can stop. And you have a lot of them. You start with 2 and you get 1 back every 9 seconds, even if you don't have you don't get a boon to speed up the regeneration of endurance, or you don't have energy sigils. So every 9 seconds you get an extra dodge. Very powerful. Dodge is also 300 length. So if I'm here, I'm facing forward, that's about 300. I do 1 dodge. That's 300. That is basically most bombs. If all of their wells are placed in one single spot, right in front of me here, with 1 dodge, I pretty much can traverse all of it. Now, a bomb is not going to be that tightly spaced. It's going to be wider. But I'm going to go through the meat of it, and I'll be taking, just the sides of it. Just with 1 single dodge. With 2 dodges, there's pretty much no damage skills that can affect you if you double dodge. You're going to dodge through any bomb with a double dodge. So it is important. It's possible to do a jump dodge, which is basically you jump and then you dodge. It's a little bit more efficient. You get a little bit of distance. It helps you to gain a little bit of distance and save 1 dodge. It takes some timing. It takes some learning and coordination. So do it once you feel comfortable with it. Don't necessarily try to do it because somebody said it's better.
It also makes your dodge longer.
Slightly longer, yes.
Yep.
Now, jumping is important for a second reason too, because as we talked about the stairs here and verticality, Inet is really bad with verticality and Guild Wars is bad with verticality. There is a lot of ground skills that only affect you if your feet are actually on the ground. So you can be in the air over the bomb and you might not be getting any damage. So that's why you can jump. You literally can jump out of damage by just jumping, and by the time you land, you're outside of the bomb. And in the meantime, you're not getting hit because you're not on the ground. So jump is a good skill to utilize to avoid damage as well. Again, don't focus on that as a necessary means because other things are more important. But this is an additional thing that as you get better, as you get, as the game slows down for you, and it will slow down, you can utilize to get a little bit extra. Now, in terms of skill usage, there's two main things. This is mostly for the for firebrands, to a degree scrappers as well. Firebrands, whenever there is a range spike, you need to have applied Aegis and you need stability for your sub squad. The reason for it is because you need to be able to stop 1 CC and in a second CC. So, for example, a range spike will be initiated with a pull by a mesmer. That pull is gonna consume the stability. So even if players have stability, it will consume it. So if they don't have an Aegis, the first pull is not gonna be successful. However, the mesmer can mimic the pull. Not mimic the pull. Can C-split the pull and do a second pull right after. And now people don't have stability and they get pulled. And you as a firebrand did your job. You gave them stability, but they still got pulled because stability alone is not enough. Second, it could be two mesmers pulling. So it is important to have both Aegis and stability. Now, this is leading me into something for all supports. When you're in the squad, you're clicking on your squad, and just above the leave button, there is view as grid. You uncheck that. That puts you in party view. You, as a support, should always be in party view, unless you're a tag or unless you're an LT, and for some whatever reason you need to see the squad. But you should be in party view so you can see. As a firebrand, you always have Aegis. You're going to have a passive Aegis that gets applied. So if you're looking at your own Aegis for when to give Aegis, you're often not going to give it at the right moment. Now, we as a squad use Advance before fights, which applies Aegis to everybody in the subgroup. It's a long Aegis, so it can be applied early and it will stay there for a long time. But in general, what you need is usually one charge of the Mantra of Solace. That will apply Aegis on approaches for a range spike, and one charge of your Mantra of Liberation, which is your elite mantra. This is Aegis and stat. That should stop the enemy from being able to pull or interrupt anybody on a range spike without anybody getting caught. Very important. Second, on approaching for a melee hit, that's when we're using our big sustain skills. We're using big stat. That's stand your ground. That's five stacks of stability. The reason we're using that is that we're gonna get lines in our way. We're gonna get other CC that's gonna be consuming those stacks of stability. Each CC that gets negated, that's one stack of stability gone. So one stack of stability is not enough. That's gonna get consumed right away, and people are gonna start getting interrupted. So it's very important to use stand your ground at the correct moment, and then you're tiding in with other skills. Aegis is a very good skill and can tie you in while you lack stability. For example, you used up stand your ground, you had to use Mantra of Liberation to stun break somebody. You used it a second time because you needed an additional stab for somebody in the subgroup. Now you're low on stability. You're in tome 3, your skill 5 is on cooldown. Use Aegis. Aegis blocks hits, and it blocks the Condi that's being applied, or the CC that's being applied with the skill. If the skill's not hitting, there's no Condis or CCs that are being applied. So think of Aegis and stability as a how can I say it? A combo. They can do both things. Now, the difference between Aegis and stability is that if you run into pulsing ground damage, the first pulse will strip the Aegis, the second is going to affect, and that's when you need stability or another set of Aegis. Your mantra of solace comes off cooldown very quickly, so you can be popping that as much as you need it. It gives ages. You have ages on shield mace. You have ages on tome 3 skill 5. You have ages on your mantra of solace. If you're running advanced, you have ages there. So you have a lot of ages. Additionally, when a big push is happening, revenants should be going into their dwarf, dropping roads, activating your facet of nature. That's extra damage reduction. Once we get on top of them, vengeful hammers, very useful. It reduces damage to you further by another 20%, and on top of that, it's stripping them of stability. If you have the brutality trait, it's doing constant damage. It's very powerful. You can do additional damage with your weapons. Scourges. On engagement, you're using your Sound Squall. That's your heal skill. Your heal skill is not yours. You don't use it for yourself. Don't be a greedy fuck. Your heal skill is not for you. It is for your sub squad. It's for your it's to help out your supports. You're using it on the big pushes to apply barrier, so that that barrier can go up to 50% of the HP of everybody in the sub squad. But more importantly, it benefits from damage reduction of boons and other effects. So if you have protection, that barrier is 50% extra HP, but that HP is also affected by the damage reduction, and it's very powerful, and it's very important for especially for melee pushes. So keep that in mind and use those heals when your sub squad needs it. Generally, if you don't hear attack call, sometimes I like to ask for full sustain. When I'm asking for full sustain, I'm actually saying that we're gonna be staying and taking damage. That's when we need the big damage reduction. We need all of our mitigation skills. That's when we gotta activate it. So that's the Scourges, Sand Squalls, that's protection, that's dwarf, even elite dwarf, if there is energy for elite dwarf at that point, pop it, things like that. When we're doing range, or when we're taking a hit from range but not necessarily engaging in a foot hit, we do not need the full sustain. It's enough to use stab and aegis and protection as a means to mitigate damage. Protection is very important, needs to be applied constantly, because it's the biggest single damage reduction skill there is. Okay, I will end it here in terms of what I have. If you have any questions, ask away, please.
Yeah, about revenants, if you don't have enough time to get all your
Facets, right?
in melee combat to use, what do you do after?
Well, when you're entering melee, you're getting off the facets. Like, that's glint, that's dragon. You're going into melee combat, that's when you're popping them and you're switching to dwarf. And when you switch to dwarf, activate your facet of nature. It's one skill, it will activate quickly, and you're using everything, because that facet of nature is doing 20% damage reduction for everybody in your subgroup. It's unique. It's a unique damage reduction skill. It cannot be generated by anybody. It's not like protection where somebody else can generate it. And it can be quite powerful because of its unique nature. After that, you're depending on the situation. For example, on bridges and chokes, in restricted areas, roads, Super important. Like, imagine this is the bridge from here to here. You drop roads in front here, there's nobody that can be interrupted here, right? This is covering the whole bridge. It's pulsing stability, but it's also pulsing weakness to the enemy. So it's applying pressure to them as well. So very strong. Now, in open field, it's a little bit more timing, depending on the movement. If we're doing a straight up push, a W key push, as it's generally called, they're right there. We're gonna W push them. Let's say we sort of kited a hit. We did a quick stealth with W pushing. You can drop, you know, your hammer 2, switch to dwarf and drop the roads as we're hitting into them, because it's gonna affect them, and it's gonna make sure that anybody that's running over the roads, like the back tail, is getting pulsing stability and they're not gonna be interrupted. And we can do that strong push.
Oh, okay.
Anything else? All right. Well, thank you for coming out. I hope it was useful. I think I went off over pretty much, if not all, most of the important things. There's certain singular situational things. I would encourage people to ask if they're unsure in a given situation what to do or what they should have done. Especially if you got caught, whatnot, just ask away. That's the best way to learn and to improve. And keep in mind, somebody else might be shy and wanting to ask the same question, so it will benefit others as well, especially if you're not a shy person. So thank you for that, and we're gonna go and kill some people now. If you guys want to do that, that is.
Duh.